Ladies and gentlemen, if you sometimes wonder why it is important to research the meaning of the historical metronome marks, why it is important for you as a musician, for you as a listener, well, we can all have our own reasons. Some of us, many of you watching right now, I know that we're really triggered by the idea how the music originally would have sounded in Chopin's head, Schumann's head, Beethoven's head. That's interesting. But on top of that, metronome marks are important for something else. It's like musical reconstruction, like studying the music just as a science, if that were be possible. And so reconstructing the original meaning of historical metronome marks is also important because interpretation of scores, deciding what is a misprint or not, more often than not, is connected with the resulting speed. And in this case, today, I have a video for you that is really interesting. And it's also of a different nature. I've made videos about people that should know better, like the music professor or some other guys. You scroll down the library of my videos and you will find some critics where people like, for instance, also Jordi Savall, the great Jordi Savall recently, he talked about Beethoven. He said like, I don't know almost any conductor who takes metronome marks by Beethoven seriously while they are just perfect. So just practice a little bit more. These people should know better because they have studied enough, they have seen enough, they have witnessed enough, they experienced enough to say like, there is something here, but let's not talk about it. Just be brave on camera. And when people interview me and say like, just practice a little bit more, that is something I find very annoying. I have harder and harder time to tolerate that. But in this video today that I'm going to share with you, this is a timpanist who is looking for a solution at the last bar, the very last bar of Beethoven's Fifth Symphony. And now you can say like, yeah,
it's extreme.
Not yet. Now you can say like, yeah, but it's just one bar. Like, okay, that's just a detail. Yes, but you have to imagine like for every one of these people, musicians, every actor, so to say, in this musical play, the thing that they have to do, that he or she has to do, is important. So when Beethoven writes 30-second notes in a tempo where this at first glance doesn't seem to make any sense at all, of course, these professionals are going to have questions. And this video is different from, for instance, the Jordi Savall claim and others, because this is a genuine attempt to solve the issue. They're just missing one factor, which is the correct meaning of the metronome marks. Because as we will see, and stick with me through this video because it's very interesting, also the points that he's making and the person who is visiting, one of the greatest researchers on Beethoven manuscripts living, like it's incredibly interesting. But they come to the conclusion like it's twice too fast. So for those of you who are longer here, you know exactly what direction I'm heading to. This modern reading of the metronome mark, where every click corresponds with the metronome, with a note value in the metronome mark, is untenable. We have to go to the old pendulum way, the back and forth. And yes, there are sources for that. Back and forth together, whole beat, the full beat, which is connected to the note value in the metronome mark. And then suddenly many problems are solved. Also this one, which is apparently a long-standing issue among timpanists. This is one of the iconic places, so to say, as you learn in this video, for timpanists. So we solve that instantly without... It's an interesting story and you learn a lot. We're going through that. So I'm going to take you to the video. First, I would like to ask you, if you're new here or not yet subscribe to the channel, like this video. You know, I want to grow to 100,000 subscribers once. That's a long stretch, I know, for a channel that is now focusing on a small part of historical informed performance practice with an accent on informed, I would say. And also, I want to express my gratitude for all my patrons. They make it possible that I do that research and record these videos for you. If you want to be closer to the project, there is a link in the description box to my Patreon site. We have updates about the project that we're doing. You just are closer to the project. We have also podcasts that it's kind of exercise for me, because I really would like to start a podcast, but it's like I have no time to do that right now. But there you have already 15 or 16 podcasts and all so other stuff like recordings, practicing sessions, and we have hangouts where you can actually join me in a call every 2 months with a Zoom call, and just directly ask questions and have just a nice chat. And all these recaps of these hangouts are also there. So for you, when you go on Patreon right now and subscribe, become a member there, you have tons and tons and tons of content to enjoy. Okay, without further ado, let's go to this Adrian Bending. And I'm going to jump here right away to 2 minutes, 6 seconds. You can watch the entire thing. It's very interesting. But here we are going with him to Jonathan Delmar, which is, as I said, one of the most important Beethoven scholars. He was one of those who worked on the new edition of Berenreiter's 9 symphonies for Beethoven. I mean, these people know what they're talking about. Let's listen here. The case is going to be made like, yeah, this is not possible because it's too fast.
And so I went to visit the conductor and editor, Jonathan Delmar, a man so steeped in Beethoven that he showed me to his Beethoven room with floor-to-ceiling shelves of books, scores, parts and manuscripts.
The Fifth Symphony was composed between 1804 and 1808, with Beethoven himself conducting the premiere in December 1808.
This copy score was vernichted, completely eliminated. Was bombed in Leipzig. Unfortunately, it was in the Breitkopf archive. Took a direct hit. And all we have is the photocopies of some pages, as you see they're negatives, that's what was taken in those days, before 1942, some pages of this copy score. And what they did here was they photocopied those pages in which they thought there was a correction in Beethoven's hand. They got it right mostly, and they got it wrong sometimes. Some of the pages that they copied don't have anything in Beethoven's hand. But that's what they did. And unfortunately, they didn't do the last page.
Of course they didn't.
Blast it. But actually, we know what the last page had. It had the reading we know with all that stuff on it. All the other surviving sources descend from the copyist score. So all we have as evidence for what that copyist score had in it is these three sources. Okay, and all of them had that.
That's a very important statement. So we have a situation where there was a copy made of the Fifth Symphony. We will see there is a discovery of another copy more recently. But in that copy, we think it's lost during the Second World War. It was just destroyed in 1942. But before the destruction, they made some photocopies, as you've seen, and in some of the pages, we can see actually Beethoven made corrections in the copy of the autograph. Unfortunately, the last page where this mystery of the timpanis is presented, like that page doesn't survive, so we don't know what was there. But we already have established the problem. Like we are searching for that page because that's like something we want to figure out because it doesn't make much sense. And now starts the narrative. That's also something typical. Like when people just think see only one perspective and say, okay, this doesn't make any sense. Once they say that to themselves, it's been regarded as a fact, and there is no way back. Of course, that's what we have to change. But anyways, then start a new phase, which is a kind of narrative. Okay, what could have happened? The introduction of the mystery. And I'm not saying this sarcastically, because it's sometimes funny to see because it's always the same pattern. Hey, the Hammerklavier Sonata doesn't make any sense. What could have happened? Oh, Beethoven's metronome was broken. Oh, that's interesting. Or Beethoven might have actually read the metronome mark below the width, although that's basically impossible. Because we have the Ninth Symphony, a place where he writes 120 or 108, although we're not sure what it is there because we cannot We cannot figure out what Beethoven wrote there. It's just like a scribble. We see just two numbers. And lo and behold, it's like just right in those metronome marks. And so that's the narrative. We start right away to deviate from the core of the problem. Do we have all the facts straight? Do we know for 100% sure that what we see is actually impossible? And therefore, I cannot blame these people, because they are like, of course, in the bubble. Of course, if you've never heard of a whole beat, how can you tell? Once you've heard about that, and still, in spite of knowing the concept, when Jonathan Del Mar would know about the concept of whole beat, and in spite of that, still let his editions with Berenreiter be influenced by the single beat metronome marks, then we would have a huge problem, because then you're actually hiding information that is just a very simple solution from your audience, and actually has a major implication when you are editing and publishing at a major publisher worldwide for Beethoven, the symphonies, right? So, but here starts the beginning of the narrative.
I think that the scores of works that we now think of as classics or masterpieces were prepared with suitably lengthy and meticulous care. Beethoven only had ink to write and edit with, but that
So this is a preparation for Beethoven made a mistake.
isn't the main reason that scores of his can look to us to be somewhat chaotic. Time was a huge factor for composers, where they were frequently under extreme pressure from employers, promoters and patrons to produce music at an alarming pace, often in challenging conditions.
That's partly true, by the way. I mean, in this case of the Fifth Symphony, yeah, Beethoven didn't have a lot of time. He finished the Fifth Symphony just barely in time with the Sixth Symphony, by the way, that was premiered in that 1808 concert. And so, yeah, the ink was still drying. I mean, it's not me who's saying that. Really, eyewitnesses actually say that the orchestra, part of the orchestra was like dismissed because they had to play in another venue for a concert of the widows of deceased musicians. And so Beethoven basically had just half of an orchestra and had to pull together an orchestra from the army and literally people from the street. And so they were sitting there, have never played with each other, and there the score was there. And that's a score that was lost until recently. But now comes the conclusion. And that's a very important statement. Why are we actually researching this? Why is it important? And here you can see that the conclusion why this must be a mistake, it's Jonathan Del Mar who is saying that, is because if we take it literally, the tempo, it is ridiculous.
And of this too, and scribbled out the minim entirely. This was indeed one of Beethoven's methods of deletion, as we've seen, which he could use here with confidence, because there'd be no possibility of it being misunderstood as real demisemiquavers, which in such a fast tempo could have no possible sense, because they could not be played literally.
First off, the way that these demisemiquavers or these 30-second notes are crossed out is not Beethoven's usual way of crossing out. So the discussion is literally here, of the three lines are that 30-second notes, like with the combination with the trill, or is it the crossing out of the half note? And then you see how this conclusion of this, like it makes no sense. We can be very confident that we can rule it out as a fact that this was what Beethoven meant. And this is in spite of the fact that Beethoven never deleted or corrected his scores in this way. In this particular case that we want to solve because of the too high speed, we must accept it because it doesn't make any sense. And you see how dangerous it is for accepting like the current paradigm, so to say, of the single beat reading, because that blocks you from seeing other possibilities. Of course, Beethoven is very precise. We know that, in spite of the fact that his scores sometimes look like a cluttered ink pattern, but the guy knew what he was doing. And that case is made here, and there comes a problem. Because if you think that if you accept the fact that Beethoven was precise, in spite of the fact of his handwriting, then he could not have made a mistake, right? So we have to find another solution. It's very interesting here as well, because you will hear the resulting speed that actually, literally, Beethoven would have asked his timpanist to play. And it's, surprise, surprise, more than double or double the speed. I don't remember. We're going to listen as the world record of timpani playing.
Beethoven is that his notation is extremely precise. The examples here are very carefully thought out and notated. His intentions are really clear, and technically, everything he writes is possible to play.
Most players would agree that playing timpani strokes as fast as possible doesn't create the best sound. Just for interest, I looked at the world record for drumming speed and worked out that you'd need to be able to play more than twice as fast as that. And so, any idea that anyone can play what is printed is complete fantasy.
Okay. Then the question is, how do we solve this, right? We go a little bit further in the video, and there comes, it's very interesting. I told you, so pretty recently, 1988, as I've learned also here. I used that manuscript, by the way, in my 1808 video. You can find it on the channel, the durations video, so to say. So what happens now is we have this problem of the too fast notes. It's like double the speed that we actually maximum could play. This doesn't ring a bell, but now we have a copy, the parts actually from which the players played the Fifth Symphony in 1808. That's unbelievably cool, right? And guess what? No 30-second notes.
No one's ever seen that.
No, that's right. That's why the whole thing is rather a curious mystery. Right. How could he get it right once and make mistake the other time?
It's a mistake now. So it's the same copyist who made the autograph copy, from which all the later editions are made. All the editions with the 30-second note timpani notes at the end, which is on itself an incredibly overwhelming fact. It's actually Jonathan Del Mar who says that there is no doubt all the editions that we have are made from that copy that has been lost during World War II. And there we see the 30-second notes. We cannot check in that manuscript anymore if there was a correction by Beethoven because we lost the manuscript. But my idea is when all the editions are made from that copy that is lost, in which Beethoven made the corrections, then probably the publishers who published the Fifth Symphony later, based upon that copy, why would I have ignored a correction by Beethoven in the last page of the Fifth Symphony if there was one? So probably there wasn't one. So the 30-second notes, that's actually also what Jonathan Del Mar says, they 100% certain they were present in that copy that got lost. And now we have the other copy by the same copyist, the parts for the players. And there is actually no sign of these 30-second notes. In fact, it's just as you see here. And now comes the section trying to explain, in spite of everything that I just explained to you, and also that's explained by Jonathan Del Mar, all the editions we have must have been based upon that lost, clean copy. Why they have to be wrong.
The final thing for me to try to establish is how the printed version we all grew up with looks so different to that first timpani part, used in the premiere under Beethoven's baton and overseen by the same copyist.
He saw this, and I think that Beethoven had him in the next room. So he was writing this is the first thing to be done. He wrote this, and he said, look, excuse me, Ludwig, what do I do here? And Beethoven said, oh, sorry, that was just, you just write this. So he wrote him. Then he came, how many months later was it that he then wrote the score? No, both of these were before September. We don't know how many months or weeks later than that score was. How many weeks did he have to forget? He must have forgotten. He'd done that whole score. He was exhausted. It was dark. He had no light. He was frozen. And he just, without maybe thinking too hard, he just wrote mechanically what he saw in there. He didn't recall the fact, oh God, I asked Beethoven about this and he told me to do that, didn't he? He forgot.
There's no shred of doubt.
No shred of doubt. I've no shred of conscience, of thought, of positive worry that Beethoven could conceivably have written minim with and a minim with it makes no sense within his convention of notation.
So I was laughing because it's a beautiful story. I really enjoy these stories. I really do. Don't get me wrong. But you have to imagine, it's one of the greatest Beethoven scholars that we're actually witnessing here. And in order, still starting from the idea of that single beat metronome mark in which that timpani note doesn't make any sense. And so we went from denying the fact that the original copy from which all the other editions are made actually must have been wrong, in spite of the fact that all the other editions, and let's stick to the 19th century editions, there you had the Breitkopf editions, and like the great editions made in the 19th century, very critical, that all these people were just ignoring that. They were not seeing that. They were not seeing the implication of the ridiculous speed that was asked by Beethoven, supposedly. So you have to put aside all of the editions, all of the publishers, critics, the scholars of the past 100 years, 150 years, and say like, they didn't know better. Now we have the parts that were hastily written for the evening concert 1808, and there it's not. So how do we actually now connect point A that the same to point B, the same copyist going from 30-second notes or from the parts back to the 30-second notes? We don't really know. Like he said, like, is it months, is it week? He must have forgotten. It was cold. He was like freezing. He wanted to have this thing done. And I can give him 3 others, like he didn't like it, or whatever. He just like, he forgot. He didn't ask Ludwig anymore. I mean, I love the stories because you can see these people sitting in the room. By the way, probably you would say Louis, because that was like whatever. But we start from the metronome marks. We start still, still the metronome mark is like the entire thing. It's the only thing that drives this conclusion. And you have a lot like these. Shall we talk about ornamentation? Because this is kind of ornamentation. It's not really ornamentation, it's just a rhythmical section. But like ornamentation is the same thing. You go to a certain speed, you go to a certain maximum speed, like guess what? That becomes impossible. Anyways, at the end of the video here by Adrian Bending, he makes a point that is really interesting. We're going to listen to that, and then I have some final thoughts about that.
But none of this makes it actually more likely to be true. When dramatic new evidence comes to light, it forces everyone to reconsider, even if it feels uncomfortable that what you grew up with and find familiar can be discredited. If we really want to play Beethoven to try to get as close as we can to what he intended, then surely it's vital to consider any new findings, weigh up all the evidence, and then make our best judgment.
Great. The music is a little bit too hard, too loud to really understand him very well, maybe. But what he's saying is like, okay, this might be a shock to many, because for them, it's like an iconic passage. And I get that. I applaud this. I mean, we need people that go into the details. The point is made like, okay, but you have to accept this because we figured out there is no other way. And so if we really care about reconstructing Beethoven's intentions, then you should go along with this, because it is useless to resist factual information that points to another reality compared to the one that you grew up with. And this is true. Of course. Now my question is, if it turns out that the reading of the metronome is wrong, would you still say the same thing? Like, we do now know that based on facts, if only circumstantial evidence, if only just metronome marks that are impossible, which are largely enough present, statistically enough present to say like it doesn't make any sense. This single beat reading doesn't make any sense. So even if only from circumstantial evidence point of view, we have to reconsider our reading of the metronome. And now this will lead to a Beethoven that is very far away from what you have been grew up with, like your developed taste, what we think we know about Beethoven. But would that be enough to be stand in the way of reconstructing really what the composer had in mind? So we have to go much slower. When we say that, would that be still okay? I'm not sure in this case by Adrian Bending. But I can tell in generally today, it only works in one direction. Okay, but when it turns out that it is all much slower, then we have to go. Would you say the same thing? I hope so. I doubt it for now. So this is a cool story. I mean, really enjoy that. Hopefully you too. And by the way, if you want to listen our Fifth Symphony, here's our Bandcamp page. You can go there and then just click on the Fifth Symphony. Any symphony you want, you can listen 3 times for free. And then this is the ending of our version. Of course, if you come from a very fast performance, this is a little bit of a shock. You need time. You need to listen 3 times. When you listen 3 times, I can promise you, you will be cured forever from a single beat paradigm. I'm not saying disease because it isn't a disease, but it's a paradigm. A paradigm in the sense of like, okay, that's how the world sees that element, that part of the world today. That's that, and therefore we call the book A Paradigm Shift in Classical Music, Fixing the Beethoven Mistake. So, I hope you enjoyed this story as much as I did. Again, a lot of respect for the people who made this video. Maybe Adrian, I don't know if he will see this video once or not. I might reach out to him, or if you know him or whatever, send him this video. And always happy to talk. Always happy to talk with people that generally are interested in reconstructing what the composer had in mind. I'm not saying I'm right in all the things that I'm saying. The only thing that I'm pretty convinced of is there is no other solution to the metronome marks as a whole. As to Beerenreiter and the publishers there, I really would like to talk to these people, really, and maybe I should do some effort to really reach them, because they might be more reachable than I think. There must be people that say, like, this makes sense. I'm sure these people are way too smart, and they're way too concerned, and they're way too involved in, like, if you publish Beethoven's symphony and you dive into the manuscript for your entire life, I mean, you must have the feeling that Beethoven is actually a close friend to you. I mean, I have that feeling already now by just reading his letters and what have you, his conversation books. It's so cool. All the composers, guys, read letters, read diaries from the time. It's the best thing I can advise you. And you learn so much, and you get to know these composers so well. They become old friends. And that's so cool. And that is something we all should be together in this entire planet. That is something we should not forget in these times. And music brings people together. That's the most important thing I can say. And maybe of the entire video right now. Go. Hope you enjoyed the story. Think about the link in the description for our Patreon site. Go and check it out if something for you. Reach out to me if you have any questions. Leave it in the comments. And for now, that's all I've got for you today. Thank you for watching. We see each other very soon again. Bye.